Rob Spearman, Max Crabb, or anyone else of sound mind. Should you be offended, provoked, intimidated, shocked, confused, or just made to think independently, log on to MaxWorldLive.com right now. It's your voice we want to hear in Max World. And now, live from the palatial studios of Webcast One Live, your host, J. Michael McCoy.
Well, as you can see on your picture, or you can hear on your radio, this is not J. Michael McCoy. I'm sitting in the catbird seat here. This is the master's throne I'm sitting in. I feel inadequate sitting here. I usually am across the way in a supporting role as he calls me the co-host, but I'm the junior partner on Tuesdays. But this is Tom Coates. I'm the director for Consumer Credit of Des Moines, and I'm bringing you the show as best I can with my meager abilities today. And today, though fortunate for me, we have an eminent guest, a gentleman I've known for some years, a lot of credentials behind his name. His name is Steve Scheffler. And Steve, I want to introduce you. You're carrying two hats, and I don't know what, Ryan, were you able to get all of that? I don't know. We had a lot of things behind Steve's name to get up there behind his credits. One of them, Steve, tell him that you are not only the director for the Iowa Faith and Freedom Coalition, but you are also the committee man for the Iowa Republican Party. Do I have all of that right?
That's correct. Yep.
That's quite a bit of responsibility. Steve has been hacking through the political forest as long as I've known him, and long before that. Some of your early teeth were cut with Steve Forbes, and I'm sure you had some experience before that. Tell the audience a little bit about who you are, what you do, and kind of acquaint them with what's going on in your life.
Thank you, Tom. It's good to be on the air today with you. I've been a long-time activist, more years than I'd like to probably recount, about 44 to be exact. I sold insurance for several years and loved that. And then I kind of got into the political arena, even though I've been interested in it for a long time, kind of by accident maybe. I went to work for Pat Robertson's campaign back in 87 and 88. And then another period of my life, I worked for Bob Dole's campaign in 95 and 96. And I worked for Tom Talkie's U.S. Senate campaign back in... that would have been 89 and 90. And then I worked for Steve Forbes in 99 and 2000. And kind of in between those stints, I kind of worked with faith-based political stuff. And currently today, and I have been for the last, 14 and a half years, the director of the Iowa Faith and Freedom Coalition, which is my real passion in terms of what I do full-time.
And at one point, the organization was known as the Christian Coalition of Iowa. It was, again, going back some of your ties with Pat Robertson. You became disentangled from that and went with Ralph Reed's Iowa. Now, it's the Iowa Faith and Freedom, but on a national basis, Ralph has the Faith and Freedom Coalition, doesn't he?
Correct.
And I've been at events. In fact, you've even had me MC, I think, one where Ralph comes in. Ralph Reed, many of you may know, has been a long-time political operative in the Christian conservative circles. Is a dynamic speaker. Always a pleasure to hear him speak. He comes in probably at least a couple times a year and appears at your functions, doesn't he?
Yes, he does. Mm-hmm.
Speaking of functions, you have one up and coming you told me about just before we went on the air. Do you want to share some of that news with our listeners today?
Sure. We've got our 14th annual Iowa Faith and Freedom Coalition banquet, which has come an annual tradition now, has been for 14 years. It's going to be at the Knapp Building out at the Iowa State Fairgrounds on Saturday, September 27th. We'll have a dinner at 5, and we'll have a program about 6, and we'll probably be done about, I'm guessing, about 8:45. And we have yet to release a press release, but it is confirmed that Senator Ted Cruz is going to keynote that event. Governor Branstad and Congressman King have all confirmed to be there.
Oh,
and we're also looking maybe for an additional speaker of some high profile. nature would speak, but it's our annual event, and it's
Well,
a big.
I may be available that day, Steve.
yeah.
I'll check my calendar and let you know what my speaking fees
Sure,
are.
you bet. So we're kind of thrilled about that. Of course, we think that's prime time about 5 weeks before the election when people are going to be all pumped, and we intend to give them their marching orders in terms to be involved in some campaigns so that we can have some great victories on November 4th.
Well, and I've been at a number of your events over the years. Always been pleased. I don't think I've ever felt like I wasted an evening to come over and sit in. Give us the contact information. Do you have a phone number, a website where people that are hearing this might want to get involved, at least from an attendance standpoint? Can you
Sure.
give us some information on that?
Yeah, I can give them our office number, Tom, which would be 515 225 1515 225 1515, and our website is www.ffc for Faith and Freedom Coalition, Iowa spelled out, .com. So it's www.ffciowa.com. That's our website.
Okay, all right. We'll try to get that one more time. But again, the date on the event and the location once more.
Saturday, September 27th, at the Knapp Learning Center out at the Iowa State Fairgrounds.
Mm-hmm. What time would it start?
5 o'clock dinner.
Mm-hmm.
6 o'clock program. Should be done by about 8:45.
Mm-hmm.
And just so your listeners know, Tom, this is a darn good cater. It's not going to be rubber chicken, so it's a darn good cater. So it's good food.
I've very seldom been disappointed by the food either. The fare that you put on, the quality of the events is significant. And again, for those of you that missed it or didn't hear it, we've got the governor, we've got Steve King, and now we've got U.S. Senator Ted Cruz committed, and perhaps even more when we get to that point. Steve, you've been involved a lot on the local issues. When I say local, I'm talking about Iowa. The media cuts us no slack. Usually we have any division or fissures in our party, and I say our, I've been a lifelong Republican. Not that I always necessarily vote a straight line, but I so seldom find a Democrat worth casting my vote for that it's a rarity. I'll just be honest with you on that. So I consider the Republican Party my party. I don't embrace everything they do, but anytime we get any kind of divisive issues, the press likes to play them up. We've had some in the last few years. Do you want to chronicle your observation of what transpired a few years ago with what I think is generally described as the liberty wing of the Republican Party and their move to, some people say, take over the Republican Party, and then the move to oust them? Can you kind of chronicle some of that in the next few minutes for our listeners?
The Liberty Wing, was a group, of course, that supported Ron Paul by and large. And just so that people understand where I'm coming from, I welcome new people into the party because a lot of times when you look at Republican events, that crowd tends to be kind of a graying population, older people by and large. And we certainly need those people, but we also need new blood, younger people. And, of course, that's a lot of what Ron Paul brought to the table. And as somebody who had worked for Pat Robertson back in 86 through 88 and saw a lot of new people, maybe from a little bit different perspective, a lot of social conservatives, Bible-believing Christians that got involved and stayed involved and actually added a lot to the Republican Party. So please understand, listeners, that I do think that it's important for us to add new people to our ranks. And most of the Liberty people, I think, by and large, had good intentions. They brought some new fervor to the party that wasn't there before. But then there were some maybe what some people might consider unfortunate set of circumstances where not only did they get elected to some positions at the state party, but then basically all the positions that were filled at the state party, staff-wise, were filled by those particular people. And I think what happened was that made a lot of regular Republicans, including social conservatives, of which I consider myself one, they felt left out, and there was no room for them. And then probably what further stereotyped that attitude was when the delegates to the Republican National Convention in Tampa in 2012 22 of the 28 voted for Ron Paul as opposed to Mitt Romney. And that probably, more than anything, that vote at the convention probably alienated a lot of people in the party ranks who had been regulars for years and years. So as a result of that, maybe that door not being open to a lot of other people beyond the Liberty people, or at least the perception was that, then you saw maybe a reaction to that. And so like when we had our state committee elections for the state central committee here in April, basically those people were either didn't run for reelection, or in other cases where they did run for reelection, they were defeated. And so now we have 16 people on that committee, of which only 7 were the old members who came back in. But again, they weren't the Liberty people; they were more the mainstream Republicans. But the one thing, Tom, I want to emphasize to the audience, which is kind of a misconception that was being spun by some people prior to our election of Jeff Kaufman as the new state chairman on June 28th, was that somehow the new committee of 16 people were moderate liberal Republicans. And I can tell you, I know all these people real well. I knew them well before they were elected. And without a shadow of a doubt, all 16 of these people are very conservative people. I don't think there's one member in that committee that wouldn't consider themselves strongly pro-life, strongly pro-traditional marriage. Sure, if you want to talk about degrees of conservatism, there may be 3 or 4 on that entire committee. They're maybe not quite as conservative as I am. But again, I wouldn't put anybody in that committee in the category of a moderate liberal Rockefeller Republican. They're good people who have the party's interests best at heart and want to make sure that we do win elections this fall, because we have a lot of competitive elections here in Iowa.
We absolutely do. And a lot of this centers around, it oftentimes come back around to money. And politics, as much or more than most activities, involves money and the ability to raise money, which we talked about with our guest last week, Brad Zahn. One of his problems was he was not able to raise money. And I have known Brad a long time, greatly respect him. Part of that was his single-mindedness on some of the special interests that they would not give him money. But moreover, many of the deep-pocket Iowa Republicans did not open their pockets once the Liberty Wing took over. And that hopefully is changing now. Jeff Kaufman, I think, is, from what I understand, doing a good job. We've got some good people in charge of the finance. One of them is a guy we had on here to interview one time, Mark Jacobs, who was running for the U.S. Senate seat unsuccessfully, came in third, was not my candidate, but certainly has the money. I think he's written a good-sized check himself and perhaps has contacts where he can get some more. I think it looks like we're back on track to hopefully be competitive, because we've got an opportunity here, Steve. The door is wide open and the wind is at our backs. We've got a president that is increasingly unpopular. He's in the 30s% on the latest polls on his approval ratings. He's definitely into the lame duck status. He's doing things that further galvanize our party. And if we don't shoot ourselves in the foot and we can stay competitive on the money angle, we should be able to pick up a number of seats this year. Iowa Senate, U.S. Senate, strengthen our position in the House. These are opportunities that we can't afford to pass up. Wouldn't you agree?
Exactly. And Tom, you may have seen the article in the paper today, but I think that Jeff Kaufman announced that basically the party has raised over $300,000, and I think that, if I'm not mistaken, that's more money in that short 1-month period that he's been chairman than the party did collectively in the last 20 months together. So money's not everything, but you got to have enough money to compete.
Exactly right. Now, after the break, we're going to come back and we're going to talk a little bit more about the Iowa political landscape as it sits today. But we really appreciate you tuning in and listening to the show today. This is Tom Coates, and I'm subbing in for J. Michael McCoy.
Get away from us, you mean old credit card. We don't have any more money. We're in trouble now. Save us! Help! Somebody save us! Somebody help! Help! Save us!
Hi, I'm Tom Coates from Consumer Credit of Des Moines. If your credit card's a little too animated, give us a call.
Hooray! We're saved! Consumer Credit! You're our hero!
Yes, now your favorite programs on Webcast One Live can all be watched and listened to on any Android or Apple device. Your phone, tablet, or iPad. Yes, your favorite shows on Webcast One Live are available live or on podcast wherever you go. Let me introduce to you some of our great shows.
Shalom! Every week on Understanding the World with Rabbi David Kaufman, we'll talk about issues in the Middle East, issues related to the Jewish tradition and religious traditions in general, and keep you up to date on exactly what's going on around the world. You may know some of the story, but you haven't heard all of the story until you've heard it on Understanding the World with Rabbi David Kaufman and our special guests we have on every week.
Hey, this is Doc with Doc and Lefty. I want to tell you about our brand new time slot. It's from 6:30 to 7:30 p.m. It's on the same night, Tuesdays. We now follow Ed Fallon and the Fallon Forum on webcast1live.com. I want to tell you a little bit about our show. Our show is focused on local, state, and national, and sometimes international politics. We like to keep people updated and informed. We also have very interesting guests. So please join us every Tuesday from 6:30 to 7:30 p.m. on webcast1live.com.
So when you want to watch your favorite Webcast One program, remember, there's an app for that. You know, there's an app for that.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
If Tom Coates from Consumer Credit of America was your personal webmaster, Tom would filter out all bad debt emails. If Tom was your mailman, you'd never get any debt reduction junk mail. If Tom Coates was a lineman, he'd block any phone calls offering to reduce your credit card debt.
Hi, I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of America, and we're still your best choice for credit counseling. We're local, we're accountable, and we can do more. You make the call when the time's right for you.
When it comes to competition, there really is none for Consumer Credit of America.
Yeah, welcome back. This is Tom Coates subbing in for J. Michael McCoy. At the break we were just watching on the TV screen, one of my oldies but goodies TV spots. We just, this last week, Steve, shot the first new commercials that I've shot in a couple of years now. I've got, now this year was added in our 7th grandchild, a little girl, Allie Mae. And so we got all 7 of the grandkids out at Gray's Lake one morning, and we shot a couple of new spots that are just going to be hitting the airwaves the end of this week. So look for that, ladies and gentlemen. Finally got some new, people have been saying, "Well, you going to do anything new? I was just tired of seeing that old stuff." All right, well, we've got something new coming. Anyway, our guest today on Max World Live is Steve Scheffler. We introduced Steve as the director of the Iowa Faith and Freedom Coalition. Steve's also the committee man for the Iowa Republican Party. And when we broke off, Steve, we were talking about the state of politics, how we finally have kind of removed some of the impediments. Some of the Liberty guys that were in there are kind of not playing well with everybody and not able to raise money. We've got Jeff Kaufman at the helm now. I know there were some bad feelings that Danny Carroll was a nice guy, but again, we weren't raising any money and we weren't moving in the right direction. We seem to be now. We've got some people that can raise money. Mark Jacobs is a co-chair of the new finance committee, and the deep pockets have opened back up, and there's enthusiasm here in the state of Iowa for what's going on. We asked Brad Zahn last week what he thought the chances were that the Republicans could retake the Senate. He thought there was a good chance, and that, I think, is a big key to how successful Terry Branstad. I mean, Terry Branstad is not going to be significantly challenged by Jack Hatch. Jack's got 2 problems, as I can see it. One, most of the state doesn't know who he is. He doesn't have any money to get him acquainted with him, and many of those people that do know him don't care much for him. So the two big strikes against him, and he can't raise money, and the Democrats know he's not going to win, and so presumably Branstad will have enough in his coffers, the $4 million he's got, to spread some of the wealth out amongst needy Senate candidates, which I think was our downfall 2 years ago. We had an opportunity that we muffed 2 years ago to take the Iowa Senate. If we take that back, we could see some significant changes in areas of economics, the tax policies, and I think we would have an opportunity to actually even address some of the spiritual issues that galvanize many of the people that you deal with on a day-to-day basis. Tell us your thoughts on the possibility of retaking the Senate and what might transpire if we did.
Well, I think there is a great opportunity, Tom. There are, I think, 2 seats that are up for Republicans up for re-election down in the Ottumwa area and the Sioux City area, probably the only 2 Republican-held seats that are somewhat in danger just because of the demographics there, but I think they're going to hold on. And then there's several opportunities like, Sean Dietz is running up in that race up there where Amanda Ragan is an incumbent, and that district has become much more predominantly Republican than it was before reapportionment. But it will take a full hearted effort to retake the Senate. I think we can do that. And I would encourage our listeners that they ought to get involved in a state Senate campaign, either in their area or maybe 20, 30 miles out. And I would be more than glad to share those competitive races where they can make a difference. Maybe put a load of people together and go door to door, because that door to door stuff, or putting up yard signs, or even giving money to these candidates is going to make a tremendous difference. And of course, the bonus that we get out of that is we're going to get better legislation. Governor Branstad and the Iowa House are to be commended for the great things that they did do in spite of a Democrat state Senate, like telling the Democrats in no uncertain terms we're not going to bust the budget like they did a couple of years ago when they stayed there till June 30th. But far greater things can be done, because as you know, Tom, that if 2 Republicans or 2 Democrats want to side with the Republicans and become the majority on a certain issue, if Mike Groundsel doesn't want to debate that issue, he doesn't have to do that. And so he is a real stumbling block. And so we have got to make sure that people understand this is a primary focus. We need their help to help those candidates, not just saying, I'll pray for you, but actually help. And I would be more than glad to share the information of those races where they could make a difference.
Well, our listening audience here is in the central part of the state, Des Moines area and up north. Anything in the geographical area of this that might be competitive, particularly of interest?
Well, actually, there is, Tom. There's a one that Senator Black held that would basically include the eastern suburbs, and if I'm not mistaken, that would include like the cities of Altoona, Mitchellville, Bondurant, I think maybe Pleasant Hill. I'm pretty sure is in that area.
Okay.
And then western Jasper County. And I'm trying to think what the woman's name is, but the woman that came out of the primary, Bunce maybe, great gal though, got great credentials. I think she's got some real potential to get elected, and so that would be a race that would be quite competitive. I know there's one.
This is one we could flip that had been in the hands of a Democrat, and we could flip
Correct.
it over to a woman that's running for Republican.
Correct.
Okay.
Right. That would be one. I know there's one up in the Fort Dodge area, of course, a little bit further away. That one's going to be real competitive that we could take back. But I do know the one here in the suburbs. And of course, you don't have to live in that district to help that candidate. So that would be a real good one that's real close to home here in central Iowa.
All right. Well, good. And I know, again, that's one of your group, the Iowa Faith and Freedom Coalition's main objective is to turn out the base, get the grassroots informed, get them energized, get them, because the one thing that the Democrats have been able to do in recent years is that they do have, the motivation to get their base fired up. In fact, one of the things that we've been talking about in the last few days is that some of the most outrageous behavior that Obama is exhibiting, and we may talk about later in the show, is perhaps done to generate interest and enthusiasm on their base. I think in some cases he'd like nothing more than the Republicans to move in a direction that would engage the word impeachment. And in fact, they bragged that last weekend, just by a couple of the Republicans mentioning that, they were able to raise millions of dollars by going to their base and saying, look, they're wanting to impeach your guy, get involved, send us some money. It's, I don't know, I mean, some people view this as just an attempt to wake up what Rush Limbaugh calls the low information voter. But typically in the off-year elections, when we don't have a president up on the ballot, Steve, the Democrats typically do not turn out, and they desperately want them to turn out. They want their money and they want their votes. And so I think it's important that the Republicans not give them anything more than we have to. As much as I would love to impeach the guy, I think he deserves it 10 times over. I don't personally want to head down that road because I think it gives them what they want, not what we want. What do you think?
I think you're right, Tom. I mean, there's no doubt there's some impeachable offenses that would be well worth going after, but I'm like you. I just, and I never say never, but I just am afraid that that's a game, or not a game, but a tactic that we can't win, and it detracts from the real goal, which in my view is to take back the U.S. Senate, which is an absolutely essential if we're going to ever see, continue to see good court decisions like the Hobby Lobby case, because a lot of our justices, like Scalia, are getting older. And so that's why I feel so passionately about getting Joni Ernst elected. And as you know, Tom, she's in a dead-even race.
Mm-hmm.
And regardless of who people support in the primary, it is absolutely essential we get her elected. And if she does, and when she does, then I think that ensures that Republicans will take back the U.S. Senate, and that we'll get an opportunity with a Republican president in 2016 to make some of those court nominees that will absolutely help enshrine interpreting the Constitution and not rewriting it.
All right. Well, I've got this slated for a little longer in the show, but let's jump into it now. The Braley-Ernst race. Some people have said it is the most competitive U.S. Senate race, perhaps in the country. There's a lot of outside money on both sides. I'm already tired of seeing these TV and these radio spots, and we've got months to go. Braley has, at one point, had a pretty significant early lead, managed to blow that by gaffe after gaffe. Let me chronicle it for the listeners. What started out, the thing was when the government was shut down. He probably goes back much further, but when the government was shut down, on an interview, his biggest complaint was that there was not a towel service in the congressional gym, and it led to some people referring to him as Towel Boy Braley. He was crying about we had to do our own towel service down there. The bigger one, the one that has bitten him biggest, is when he was down in Texas back in January, was talking to a group of other trial attorneys, and he was saying in the thing that you can't afford to have an Iowa farmer, Chuck Grassley, in charge of the Senate Judiciary. Therefore you have to give your money to me, a guy who's been fighting tort reform his whole adult life. And he showed who he was at that point. In fact, he did it in front of a rolling case of half-empty booze bottles. I think that's still interesting because every time you see the replay on the commercials, you see the half-empty booze bottles behind Braley. Recently said at the 4th of July parade that a woman came up to him and said, "We support farmers," and he said, "I am one." And it was close enough and the words were articulate enough where his excuse really didn't hold water, that he didn't understand what she was saying. And then the most recent thing, Chickengate. Are you familiar with this
Exactly.
one? Mm-hmm. Some people say, it's about a chicken going onto his property, what's the big deal? But the thing is, this reveals character. I think the Chickengate, much as anything, reveals the character of the man. Neighbor has chickens. Turns out they're therapy chickens. She deals with troubled children, and these 4 or 5 chickens she has helps her deal with these young children. And to try to show that and this is a registered Democrat neighbor, exactly. To try to show that she was not anything but a good neighbor, she brought a dozen eggs over, and they refused her. They say, no, in fact, we're going to sue you and the homeowners association. Just by him calling up the homeowner association attorney cost the homeowner association about $1,700 that they were hoping to use for infrastructure in the homeowners association, and they had instead spent it on legal bills to fight off Bruce Braley complaining about one chicken coming across his yard. To me, this is defining the man's character, and I think it's very important. What do you think, Steve?
Exactly, Tom. And of course, on top of that, then I am confident that Joni Ernst and her allies are going to expose Bruce Braley for who he really is. He's got a voting record that was more liberal than Senator Tom Harkin, This is the guy we need to remind listeners that he is the one that gave the closing speech on the floor of the House of Representatives in favor of passing Obamacare. He is not a conservative. He's not a mainstream Iowan. He is as liberal as they get. And if he is elected, God forbid, we risk having him there for 30 years because Iowa doesn't have a tradition of throwing out incumbents. So it is absolutely essential that people work for Joni Ernst, give her money, go door to door for her, make phone calls, because whatever we do or don't do will make a difference in her getting elected on November 4th.
We've got about a minute left before the next break. Steve, tell us what you can about Joni.
Well, I've known Joni for, I guess, a few years now, since she's been in the Iowa Senate, and she is a typical Iowan. She is down to earth. She is who she is. She was born and raised on a farm. Got a great military background, as you know. A top sergeant in the Iowa National Guard. Did a great job as a county supervisor, not a county supervisor, but the county auditor down in Montgomery County in southwest Iowa. And then has a phenomenal record as a state senator, fighting bigger government. And so here is a true conservative. As you know, Tom, I don't give people a pass unless I think they're very conservative, but she's phenomenal. And I think as long as she exposes Brady's record, that she's going to win on November 4th.
We never got a chance to get her on the show. I tried to get her on. I did meet with her for about 90 minutes one evening, and I was impressed. So anyway, we're coming back from the break. Tom Coates subbing in for J. Michael McCoy, Max World Live. Glad to have you with us.
This is Webcast One Live.
I'm Brian Leach, owner and general manager of Service Legends. I brought along a couple of the home comfort heroes.
Hi, I'm Tammy Wells.
I am Nick Wondershad.
I am administrative manager.
I am the senior technician
from Service Legends.
It seems like every good thing, when you feel it to the bone that it's good, there's a lot of hard work put behind it. I don't think that you can fake it and have it turn out good.
If we seem like, okay, that's just weird, it's just a furnace, why would you believe so deeply in a furnace? It's not just that, we want to show the world that you can have good service.
Yeah, it's gotta be, it's your home.
It's built into our daily trainings, it's built into our culture, that we're gonna do whatever it takes to have each client say they love us, period.
That's why we spend all the hours in the training that we do. And if we guarantee it's gonna be a good experience for you, or else it's free, what type of work do you think we're gonna do?
There is a guarantee.
Temperature selection guarantee, fixed right or it's free guarantee, comfort guarantee, best value guarantee. All of these guarantees hold us accountable to ensuring that we exceed your expectations. And if for whatever reason we'd fail and we can't make it right, we guarantee all of those guarantees with a 100% money back guarantee.
If you don't think that your technician can fix it right, are you gonna say that to a client? No.
You don't have to worry about having a technician come to your house.
We drug test, background check all of our team members. We put safe people in your home. Each and every one of our service techs, 400 hours a year in training.
You tell it the minute they walk in the door. They know what they're doing, they've done their homework, and they actually truly care about what you want.
Because at the end of the day, you're the person that makes sure I have a job.
They're gonna be listening. They're gonna wanna know what your challenges are. Then they're gonna come and give you options, and you get to choose.
If I'm there to help and I make it easy and painless, I did my job right that day.
Well, when it comes to your comfort, safety, and your family, you don't necessarily go buy the most expensive, but you get the most bang for your buck.
Oh, it's worth it, because there's a lot of people that will find a way to get it to work right now and then leave and then come back, charge you again, and the cycle just repeats itself. So when I'm out there looking at the furnace, I want to find why it failed today. How can we change the part today with something that you're not going to have to worry about? Is it worth changing the part today? You can put a lot of money into a furnace. I can fix parts all day. There's good job security in that for me, but is it the right thing for you?
I get a lot of the phone calls of after the technicians are there. They're just in awe. They're like, wow, you guys are great. I don't even know what to say. You guys are great. Everything you did was perfect. It was great.
Keep going though, I like this.
Just give us a try. I'm gonna take all the risk.
I've got the time to make this right. I've got the support to make it right.
Just check us out.
And if you don't see the value in what we do,
fixed right or it's free or 100% money back.
Enough said.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
I didn't lose any sleep over that one. Hey, this is Tom Coates coming to you on Max World Live. powered by Webcast One. J. Michael McCoy is not in the house today. I'm doing the best I can to hold up the high profile and the high standards that Mac has set over the years. Now, we've got a regular caller that calls in, Frank, and he is also the host of Frankly Speaking. He generally is good enough to call us up and give us some of his insights. Frank, you're calling in today. I'm glad to have you. What do we have to talk about today?
Well, Tom, you're doing a bang-up job. Going in.
Well,
hey, I really enjoyed your Chicken Gate story that you told a couple of weeks ago. And like a good conservative, I relayed that story to my favorite progressive populist organic chicken farmer, Ed Fallon.
Oh, goodness. You got Ed out on the road doing the walk to save the planet. Okay, what happened?
So I called into his show, and I told him about your story, and he said, send me the link to that. Well, I didn't know if there was an actual link to it or if it was a story you had...
The Iowa Republican, for any of the listeners that want to get on and read that, Steve, I can't remember the name of the reporter, but he did a fine job reporting on this, did research. In fact, he even had copies of the notes from the board meeting at the Homeowners Association dealing with this matter. He was very well researched on it, and I think you can probably still find that on the Iowa Republican website. So
I found the link, and I linked it to Brother Ed. Now, Ed, I understand, is not totally thrilled with Braley for some other reasons. I'm sure he'll fall in line with him. They'll have a love fest at the end. But I think this story, there's a larger dynamic to this story that what has Braley got against the farmers? I mean, I think some real digging needs to be done here and find out if there's other instances of him slamming farmers. Because this comment about our Grassley, our senator, being ahead of the Judicial Committee, and this I see a pattern here.
I do too, and of course, the disingenuousness of the man to claim to the woman in the parade that he was a farmer. It's just, I tell you what, he's his biggest enemy. And not only is the character flawed, it appeared here, Frank, but also the judgment of the man to be saying and doing some of the things that he's doing, because this Chicken Gate thing wasn't that long ago.
And he's just an arrogant-looking guy.
Yes,
he just comes off like a smug and arrogant guy, and I think it'd be really wise to pound on that. What has he got against the farmer in the state of Iowa?
Nope, I agree with you, and I appreciate your comments on that. Keep us informed of what Brother Ed says from the Great Climate Change March, will you?
Yeah, it's a lot of the world is warming and my feet hurt.
Okay, thank you, Frank.
All right, thanks.
Okay. Always good to talk to Frank. All right, Steve, back to the situation here. Now, one of the things that I wanted to get to, we had a very competitive race for the vacated seat held by Tom Latham recently. We had Brad Zahn that came in first. We had Robert Kramer, who we both known for years. We had Monty Shaw. We had Secretary of State Matt Schultz. And we had a gentleman that I came to know a few months back, liked him, David Young. And they finished in a pretty tight five-way race. I mean, you needed 35%, didn't get it, and so we went in a convention. Now, some people didn't like the process, and some people are still sore that the fifth-place vote-getter, David Young, came out on top. I want to get your perspective on this and listen to what you have to say about it, because we had Brad in last week, David the week before. We got their perspectives, but you as the committee, as the Republican chairman, and I didn't say that right, but the give me your title again.
Committee man.
Committee man for the Republican Party of Iowa. Give me your perspective on this controversial convention that happened.
Well, first of all, Tom, that's the way the Iowa law is written. You know, if you don't get 35% in a primary, of course, that has to do with any other race in Iowa, too, whether it be for supervisor, the legislature, and, of course, Representative John Landon from Ankeny was actually in, I think, a 5 or 6 way primary, and it went to convention. So it's It's a little bit unusual, but it's not unheard of. And of course, Steve King won his first race by going to a district convention. I would say this. When I looked at all those candidates that ran that you mentioned, every single one of them, in my view, passes the litmus test on issues if you're a social and an economic conservative. They were all great people. Any of them would have been a great credit to our party in carrying the standard bearer going into November. And I won't even say it's unfortunate that David won. That's how the process works. And basically, you have to have a majority, the way the rules were written. And apparently the majority of the people on that final ballot, when it came down to two people between Brad and David, decided that they wanted David. And I won't even begin to speculate as to why that case was. And if I were in Brad's position, I would feel a little bit bad too. You know, you came that close and came in first in the primary, and you came in first in the 4 sets of balloting, I would feel badly too. But now that the process has worked the way it's supposed to and it's over, I think that we have to get behind David Young with 120%. And here's the reason, Tom. This is one of 17 congressional races around the country now held by Republicans, in the case here being Tom Latham, that the Democrats have their sights set on, that they feel that they have to win in order to take back the U.S. House. And I've known David for several years. I used to visit him in his office out in D.C. when he was Chuck Grassley's chief of staff. The guy is a man of integrity. The guy is a man of principle. The man supports issues that I do up and down the spectrum, as I'm sure you do and everybody else does.
Came across on the interview 2 weeks ago.
The thing is, his opponent, Stacey Apple, is one of the most liberal people that ever graced the Iowa political scene. She has a record of 4 years as state senator before it was defeated by a resounding victory, I might mention, 4 years ago. And this is the woman that's getting money from Emily's List. I believe she's getting money from Planned Parenthood. She is no moderate. She is no conservative. She is a far left, Harry Reid, Nancy Pelosi liberal. And in politics, you get a choice of voting for the Republican or the Democrat. And if people feel sore yet, and they say, I'm not going to vote for David Young, basically that is a vote for Stacey Apple. This is a seat we cannot afford to lose. We absolutely cannot afford to lose.
We're talking about, Brad said I sat next to her. This is a woman that might make Tom Harkin look conservative. I had her as our state's senator down in the Warren County area for a couple of years. She comes right out of the chute trumpeting her support for Roe v. Wade and abortion on demand at any stage of the pregnancy. Anybody that comes out trumpeting that,
and same-sex marriage.
Same-sex marriage, you can see why the Warren County voters were anxious to get rid of her, even with a flawed Kent Sorensen, who later disgraced himself. They were happy to even trade her for him. And so we just can't have her as our U.S. senator. I mean, a U.S. congressman. That would be an embarrassment to the state.
And if she gets elected, she may well be entrenched for a number of years.
Oh, she certainly could be. And so I think it's important that the people understand that there is a choice. David Young is not to blame. If you think that the format ought to be set up for a runoff election with the top 2 vote getters, well and good, and Brad may introduce legislation this next year to do it, and that's fine. But this was the system that we've got in place right now. Correct. David was not to blame for it, and nobody, any of his opponents, suggest that he did anything illicit, untoward. There was no backroom deals cut. When Matt Schultz came out and threw his support behind him, I think it surprised even David Young, certainly surprised, I think, a lot of other people. I believe that the concern was that Brad couldn't raise money and he still had maybe some skeletons in the closet. The latter I do not believe. The former may have been. Now we're coming down to our last break, ladies and gentlemen, and I'm going to probably direct the spotlight back to some national issues in the last segment. I'd like for you to hang in here with us for the last one. This is Tom Coates. I'm sitting in for J. Michael McCoy, Max World Live, powered by Webcast One.
Get away from my Sumito credit card. We don't have any more money. We're in trouble now. Save us! Help! Somebody save us! Somebody help! Help! Save us!
Tom Coates from Consumer Credit of Des Moines. If your credit card's a little too animated, give us a call.
Hooray, we're saved! Consumer Credit, you're our hero!
Metro Ford's on everywhere. Metro Ford's on everywhere.
See 'em here, see 'em there. You got bad credit? We don't care.
Metro Ford's on everywhere. Metro Ford's on everywhere.
Visit emetroford.com for your guaranteed credit approval. Good credit, bad credit, no credit. Everybody drives with guaranteed credit approval at emetroford.com.
Metro Ford's on everywhere.
Visit emetroford.com today.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
If Tom Coates from Consumer Credit of America was your personal webmaster, Tom would filter out all bad debt emails. If Tom was your mailman, you'd never get any debt reduction junk mail. If Tom Coates was a lineman, he'd block any phone calls offering to reduce your credit card debt.
Hi, I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of America, and we're still your best choice for credit counseling. We're local, we're accountable, and we can do more. You make the call when the time's right for you.
When it comes to competition, there really is none for Consumer Credit of America.
All right, Tom Coates coming back for the last segment of Max World Live, setting in for the absent J. Michael McCoy. My guest today is Steve Scheffler. Steve is the committee man for the Iowa Republican Party and also the director for the Iowa Faith and Freedom Coalition. Has an event coming up on September the 27th out at the Fairgrounds Knapp Center. Starts at 5. He's got Senator Cruz on the just now committed. Going to be a keynote speaker, it looks like. You've got Governor Branstad, Congressman Steve King, maybe some others coming in. Be a big event. So the number to call for tickets, 225-1515, or go to their website, fcciowa.com, for ticket information. Again, that's September the 27th. Steve, I want to jump into a couple of national issues. Right now we've got firing, shooting, blowing up missiles over there in the Gaza. Our sorry excuse for a Secretary of State, I think his greatest accomplishment was being a supreme gigolo, John Kerry, who jumped off of one wealthy woman to a bigger and more powerful wealthy woman, the Teresa Heinz Kerry. You get into the ketchup fortune over there. I think that's his biggest accomplishment. He's wiggled his way into be Secretary of State, and now we're dealing with him. He has made repeated comments derogatory towards Israel. He referred to him one time as apartheid state. He was on an open mic just very recently mocking Israel for their so-called surgical strikes in this current conflict. And then he waltzes in there with this peace accord, this ceasefire that is very favorable towards Hamas. And the nation of Israel, which is dealing with dozens and dozens of these tunnels that they planned. They have been executing terrorist strikes on the inner parts of Israel. They don't want to stop before they get rid of these tunnels. The missiles started dropping on them. Thousands of missiles have come across, many of them supplied by Iran to Hamas. And the media now wants to talk about how unfair it is to poor John Kerry that you would criticize the man doing his best to bring peace to the region. Your thoughts on this idiocy?
Well, first of all, Tom, I find it appalling and disgusting, and I don't know what other term I can use, to think that our government, at the command of Barack Obama, with an extension of John Kerry, would even begin to suggest that Israel should have a ceasefire when these terrorists are trying to have made, well known that they want to destroy Israel. And all Israel's trying to do is trying to take out these tunnels and stuff so I don't have to put up with this again, because the bottom line is there's a ceasefire. you're going to have to repeat this again. And, there's no doubt that people like Netanyahu have no respect. They have absolutely no trust in this government. And that's why it's absolutely essential to have a Republican president in 2016 that we can be proud of, that's going to lead on foreign policy again, where we can be respected in the world. We're not respected. Our enemies don't take us seriously, and our allies don't feel like they've got anybody to back them up or whatever. So.
No, and they give lip service to that Israel is our ally, but the reality is that Obama has not shown any respect for Israel or Netanyahu from the get-go. The one time Netanyahu showed up to meet with him, he said, "I'm going to go up and have dinner with my family. Once you working on what you want here, I'll get back to you in a couple hours after I have dinner with my family." Treats him like a serf, gives no respect to the nation of Israel. Kerry doesn't either. He's an extension of that. So is it any wonder, once the nation of Israel finds out the kind of danger they're looking at, they need to take out those tunnels. They need to perhaps reclaim enough land with control so that the tunnels aren't redug and that the missiles aren't just flying fast and furious. Yeah, they stop most of them with the Iron Dome, but some of them get through, and the possibility that they could get in and do some horrendous damage with explosives and arms fire coming through those tunnels, too big a risk. And I think if we were facing any kind of risk like that, we wouldn't put up with it for 2 minutes. If Canada or Mexico was coming at us, that would be that. And nobody would be able to stand in the way. And yet John Kerry thinks he can come up with a ceasefire, and is outraged that they dare would be critical of him.
Exactly.
The other thing that may be driving Obama right now, and we've been hearing in recent days, Steve, that the border crisis, again, they've known about this for a long time. They've known that there was a loophole that came out in a law that was supposed to help some of the sex trafficking and some of the things that were going on down in Central America. Obama figures out this is a loophole, and so he negotiates, I think, because the transportation RFPs were being circulated back last winter, to bring tens of thousands of these. Now, they're not all just young kids. A lot of them are teenage hoodlums, gang members of the worst stripe, all sorts of people coming from Central America up here. And the talk is that he is going to execute an executive order to grant amnesty to large numbers of some of these people in defiance of the law of the land. What are you hearing, and what are your thoughts on it?
Well, first of all, Tom, the one perspective I heard the other night when Congressman Steve King spoke at our summer get-together out at Walnut Creek Community Church, which I guess I really hadn't heard before, maybe I wasn't paying attention to, that to me is just absolutely startling and frightening, is the fact that the big majority of the children or whatever that are coming across the border right now are teenage boys, or boys that are between the ages of 14 and 17, with no doubt with a angle towards becoming terrorist trainees and the whole 9 yards. And as we know from 1986, I think it was, when Reagan thought he had a handle on this and granted amnesty, and it would never happen again. Now we're at the same juncture again, only in far, far larger portions. And I just find it amazing that a president and a U.S. government wouldn't want to know where these people are, who they are. Well, like here now, we got supposedly 140 people that have come here, children, and our own governor didn't even know about it. Our own U.S. Senator Chuck Grassley didn't know about it.
No, and then when they go to the detention centers, they can't get in. And I think there's chicanery afoot with this administration. We have seen it played out constantly. The border situation, I think, has finally. You mentioned it between the break, that the Republicans are more fired up right now because of all the scandals and outrages in the Democrats. Quote that number again.
I saw a figure, and I can't even remember where it was from, Tom, but it was on Fox News this morning that said that the Republicans have a 7% advantage on voter intensity in terms of people that want to turn out and vote. And hopefully, decidedly so, because, the IRS scandal, which we haven't mentioned. You know,
We
there's all
didn't
kinds
even
of things
get
that we
to it,
just-
and we're sadly out of time, Steve. Steve Scheffler has been my guest. He's the committee man for the Republican Party and also the director for the Iowa Faith and Freedom. Steve, we want to thank you for coming on and being our guest today, and there's other scandals and issues we didn't even have time to get to. I want to thank Mac for letting me come in and sit in the big chair today. I've been subbing in for J. Michael McCoy, who presumably will be back in force next week. As Mac says, whatever you do this week, do one thing. That's pray.